Hey, I'm so glad you're back with us. We are once again talking about Abraham, talking about what it means to live a life of faith. And so today, I'm going to be doing a few things a little maybe different, maybe the same. You'll have to see. First of all, Morgan Hereford, first kid to get my joke last week, he said it was a bad joke. What can I say? But also, Miss Susan Lair, she was the first adult to relay it to me, and I got it as well. So we've been talking about Abraham, and we started out talking about Abraham living over here in this town called Ur. And you may not know anything about Ur, but Ur at the time was this pretty much the center of the known world. That's where a lot of people lived in that area. That's where Abraham was from. That's where his family had lived. And so Abraham was told by God to leave Ur. So he left all the places that he was familiar with. I remember he had his favorite camel milk place that he would go and get his favorite camel milk. He had to leave that. And so he travels, and he travels to the land of Canaan, okay? And in this land of Canaan, he is promised by God that God's going to give him this land. Well, the land of Canaan goes through some difficulties and some trials, and they have a famine where there's no food. Because there's no rain, so there wasn't any food produced. So Abraham leaves Canaan, and he goes down to Egypt. And he lives in Egypt. We don't know how long he lives in Egypt, but he lives in Egypt probably for a few years. But he moves down to Egypt, way down there. He gets into a little bit of trouble in Egypt. He didn't exercise faith. He thought he could solve his problems and come up with his own solutions, and he did. But they created some problems for him. So he has to leave Egypt. And when he does, he comes back out over here. He comes back out over here to this area of Canaan. All right. Now, the question I want us to think about today is faith greater than fair? Is faith greater than fair? And when we think about fair, fair is a favorite word, especially when you're 9, 10, 11, 6, 7. Boy, you say fair a lot. Mom, Dad, it's not fair. He got to do this, he got to do that. If you have an older sibling, they get to go places that you don't get to go. If you have a younger sibling, they may get to stay and do things with grandparents or whatever that you don't get to stay and do. And so we focus a lot on what feels fair to us. And we're going to see today that Abraham acted where he believed that his faith was greater than doing what was quote unquote fair. Okay, what would have worked for everybody. All right, so Abraham comes back out here, and he and Lot stop at this town here. And we're going to look at it. It's in Genesis chapter 13. It says, so Abram went up from Egypt to Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. And Abram had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. So Abraham's time in Egypt was a bad time for him personally, but he made a lot of money. Now he's got the problems of that money. So he and Lot come out there in Negev. It says, now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, but the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. And quarreling, fighting, arose between Abram's herders and Lot's. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land at that time. So here's what happens. There's too many people here. There's just too many people here in this area. And everywhere you look, you have the inhabitants of the land, the people that already lived there, the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and now you have Abraham and Lot, and he's called Abram up here, and we'll talk about that later in another time, but we've called him Abraham the whole way through. It's how Scripture speaks of him later on. So Abraham and Lot now have a problem because they have too much, along with everybody else that's living in the land. The land's too small. There's not enough food. There's not enough water for the animals. And Abraham's gotten rich. Probably 10 years have gone by since he's been called out of Ur, possibly more, maybe 15, maybe 20. Lot has also gotten very rich. And they were getting along up to this point. Abraham and Lot were still getting along, but their cattle herders were beginning to argue. And Abraham realized that that was a problem because it's only a matter of time before the herders quit arguing and Abraham and Lot began to argue. And so here's the question. What do you do when you have too many people in one place? Well, somebody has to leave, right? And who should it be? Should it be Abraham? Should it be the uncle who's been taking care of Lot? Should it be the man who had the most wealth, which was Abraham? Should it be that guy or should it be Lot? And when we're going to learn something about waiting on fair, if you wait on fair, you will never get anywhere. It's sort of like a merry-go-round, which you might find at a fair, all right? And so Abraham and Lot are trying to decide on what is fair. But they don't even worry about that. Abraham doesn't worry about what's fair. And that's the point I want you to see today, because there is this place in our life where God has called us to what is faith. And faith is bigger and greater than fair. So let's talk about what was fair. Who was older? Abraham. Who was wealthier? Abraham was older. Abraham was wealthier. Okay? Who had God called? Abraham. Lot just came along with him. Okay? What else is going on? Who's the leader? Based on everything we read in the passages and in the text, including what happened in Egypt, Abraham's the leader. So if you add those up, that's 4, and Lot has 0. So what's fair? Who gets to choose? Abraham should choose. And in fact, Abraham does choose. Don't miss this, okay? We a lot of times say that Abraham didn't choose, but he actually did. By letting Lot go first, he chose. And so here's what happens. What is fair is Abraham saying to Lot, buddy, pack up and move. We're too big. Sorry, bud. It's been good to know you. Get out of here. But he doesn't. What Abraham says to Lot is this, and I want to read it to you. Abraham says, let's not have any quarreling, any arguing between you and me, or between your herders and mine, for we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before us? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. So Lot looked around and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan toward Zoar was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. And Lot chose for himself the plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. So Lot says to Abraham, this is the best land, and I'm going there. What an incredible statement. Abraham says to Lot, you choose. Lot chose. Now, sometimes we tell people to choose and we really don't want them to choose, but Abraham did want Lot to choose and he chose. So I want you to see something. Lot goes to this place here, and it's the best place. I want you to see what Abraham does. So Abraham lived in the land of Canaan. Then the Lord said to Abraham after Lot had parted from him, look around from where you are to the north and the south, to the east and the west. All the land that you see will make your offspring like that, or I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go walk the entire length of the land, for I am giving it to you. So Abram went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he pitched his tents. There he built an altar to the Lord. I want you to remember something. When Abram came out of Ur, one of the places that he stopped at was Mamre. Remember there was a giant tree there? And Abraham had stopped there and pitched his tents and made an altar. Well, it's probably been 10 years, 8 years since that time. Lot goes to the best spot, and Abraham goes back to the place that he had been to before. I want you to say it with me, because I know you've said it before. I know you've said it to your mom. I know you've said it to your dad. I know you've said it to any adult in your life, an aunt, an uncle, grandparent. I know you've said it. I know you've said it to teachers. Let's say it together. That's not fair. It's not fair. Lot gets the best. Abraham has to go back to the old place. Abraham has to go back to the place that they had left 10, 12, 15 years before because it wasn't good enough. And Abraham goes back there. But see, here's what happens. When you go in faith, you can go anywhere. And that's not easy to say. I am an older man for you guys. You guys are thinking about this. And I'm thinking about my own life. That's not easy to say. What is faith? Faith was letting Lot choose. Lot had nothing going for him. He was a big 0 on the number there. Except for the fact that Abraham let him choose. Lot said, buddy, if you're letting me choose, I'm taking the best. If it's between swimming in a nice, clean, clear pool or living next to the mud puddle, I'm going to the pool. That's what I'm taking. Let Lot choose. Then, secondly, here's what Abraham did. He didn't pout. He goes back to a place that he's known and he embraced it. That's where he set up his tents. And the idea of setting up tents there was that he was going to make it a permanent place. He was moving there. He was moving to Mamre at Hebron, and that's where he was going to live. Then, and we talked about this last week, he builds an altar. He takes these stones and he begins to pile these stones up, and he packs the mortar in there and makes the clay mortar, and he packs it all in there, and he builds more stones and piles more stones and packs more mortar in there and builds more, and he builds this altar. And he built the altar to worship God. And here's what he was saying. I would rather have faith in God than get to pick anything I want. I would rather have faith in God than choose what was best for me. He's learned something. So here's my challenge for you guys and girls. In our lives, living with faith will not always look fair. It will look like letting others choose. It will look like embracing what is left. And it will look like honoring God, even when it may feel or look bad. Abraham is pretty close to 100 at this time. He was 75 when he left Ur. I'm just going to say, for the sake of the argument, that he's about 90 to 95 at this point in time. And all he has done is gone in a circle. And so I want to just challenge us when we live and we think about what is faith. Faith is greater than fair. So the next time you're tempted to say that's not fair, when I am tempted to say that's not fair, let's ask ourselves this question. Let's ask ourselves this one question. And here's the question. Can I exercise my faith and do and act as if God is in control? That's a great question to ask. So, one other thing, and here's my thing for the day. Talked about a circle. Talked about this, so I want you to imagine a clock. And I want you to give me the answer in the comments, or you can message me. What is the best time on a clock? What is the best time on a clock? All right, don't Google it. I'll see you next time.